Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out on this strange night with slightly strange circumstances. We didn't know whether we were going to be here at all this morning, but my name is Bill Masulis. This is Chris Luscri, and we basically are co-curators of this entire series called Unknown Pleasures, which basically aims to show and recognise Australian independent film through the years. So it's nothing to do with the mainstream. Some of our filmmakers that we focus on have a little bit of a mainstream crossover, but most of them have a kind of more independent spirit in the way they make the film and in the way they think and feel about cinema. And, well, actually, I won't talk about this particular filmmaker. I'll let Chris say that. But, yeah, I'll just say we're going to have a discussion at the end with some really special guests. The filmmaker who's passed away 20 years now, his wife and his daughter, and then Ettore Siracusa, who was a collaborator with him as a young man, and even as a teenager he might have started in The Brothers. I don't know how old Ettore would have been then, but
Not that small.
yeah, probably 14, 15. But, older, 17, yeah, cool. Okay, so Chris, you want to talk about the film?
Yeah, so I'm not going to talk for too long because I'd like to everybody to get a chance to see the film without any context. But yeah, this is a really special film. It's, for me, one of the single most important films I think made in Australia in the 60s. Certainly one of the most beautiful, and it's really special to be able to screen this film. Rosemary and Ettore and Claudia are going to participate obviously in the Q&A afterwards, so please stick around for that. And hopefully you guys will learn some really interesting things about not only this particular film, but its context within Australian film culture pre the Australian film revival of the 70s. So if you guys are interested in that, it's going to be a good discussion. Thank you.
He looks like one of your clay models. Where are you from?
Nowhere. I move around.
The first house we come to will be ours.
How far?
50 miles, couple of hours.
pretty wet. Did you have any trouble?
No, no trouble at all.
Thank you everybody for staying for the film. We'll just get the chairs set up. I'd like to invite Ettore and Claudia and Rosemary to the stage, and we'll sit and have a little chat about this wonderful film. So I think perhaps the best entry point, because there's a multitude of entry points that we could begin in terms of giving context to this film and what you've just seen. Perhaps the best place to start is with a little bit of a discussion about who Giorgio was and how you all had your own individual relationships with him. Perhaps, Ettore, we can start, given that you had the earliest connection to Giorgio. Maybe we can talk a little bit about him and how you came to be involved with him, and then later on with this film.
My first contact with Giorgio goes back a few years before the production of Clay.
You could probably take the mask off when you talk. Yeah.
Okay, so I won't go back that far. But it does belong to Giorgio's biography in the 50s. So that Giorgio started shooting films as it's been recorded, Adrian Martin, a few months after he got off the ship with his Bolex. So, and that was 1953. He arrived in Australia in 52, late 52. So, my connection in the 50s was a film school that Giorgio contributed into the teaching actors to act in front of the camera. So I would say it was the first film school in Australia, probably. And it was located in Russell Street in the city. It was set up by migrants, basically to train actors for the television industry, which had just started in the 1950s. So, and then he went on, because Giorgio chose me to act in a film which was called The Brother. So I was a kid actor in 58 I think, and in that film. And so Giorgio then went on to make a film, The Spag, but I stayed with Giorgio as behind the camera then from there on until this film. So,
Was there any sense at the time of just what an undertaking this film was in terms of its comparative ambition?
no, not at all, I would say. I think we took everything in stride. You know, it seemed that a film like that could be made simply, practically no crew. At Montsalvat, there was just myself, Chris, the actor, Bob Clark, the other actor. And so we all double up in whatever was need to do. Know if one thinks now what one has to face, you know, to produce films like, you know, It's recently somebody asked me, have you got a gaffer or people like that, you know, to make film. But I think Bill and Chris know more. So it was very pleasant to be in one place, in this kind of haven. Was every morning turn up, and we all went ahead and shot the film. So as if everybody was living inside Montsalvat. It was like was a motel, and we went to sleep in the night and then wake up in the morning and start to do this scene or that scene and so on. In fact, I can't recall, you know, the film seems to be all wet, you know, there's a lot of clay and, and water and so on. But I can't recall, and so it must, the rain, I would say, was simulated in some scenes, yes. It really wasn't as cold and bleak as it seems, yes, the sunshine. So it was a beautiful time to be in such a family of people all doing and so on.
And you can feel that comparative atmosphere in the film, the way that Montsalvat really is like a character, or in some ways more real, more present even than the performers, who have become abstractions by the end of the film. That the space itself, the location itself, really becomes a kind of sentience that infects or affects every aspect of the film, including its production.
Yes, I mean, you know, and the activity didn't stop just because we were filming. You know, there was a lot of art making going on. Notably, Mecham's keeper, the jeweler, that had this little workshop. I think by that stage, the painter I think he finished, and I think Justin Mudder. I can't say whether he was still alive or not. That's the painter, yeah. But Mecham's keeper was still working in his studio and so on. Yeah.
One of the other really notable, I guess, both technical and creative achievements of the film that immediately strikes you is, of course, the quality of the photography. And Giorgio was a very, very proficient photographer, not only a creative photographer, but also a photographer of the community, particularly the migrant community, with wedding photography and family photography and stuff, which is how my family got to know Giorgio. Claudia, I was wondering, what was your exposure to Giorgio's filmmaking at the time? You were obviously very little, you had a small role, you've had several small roles in some of his films, kind of in the background.
Yes. I certainly didn't in clay, but I did go, I think I was about 10, but I did go to Montsalvat quite a few times. So there were some scenes which I observed being filmed. And as you say, it was really, really quite magical, the whole place. And yeah, I mean, people sort of took on various roles. Like, you know, I always look out for the police running, because one of the policemen was actually Janine, who was the lead actress, and they put her in a police outfit, and you can see that there was one gait that was slightly more feminine, but you really have to be looking. But it wasn't just the actual filming. I can't tell you how many rushes I saw, because it was the whole film was edited and the sound was put on and the rushes were seen, and that all took place in the studio, which was a dug-out studio in the place where we lived.
Yeah, in the basement. Underground.
Yeah.
In a terrace house in North Carlton. Yes.
And so there was a staircase leading down, and I would sit on the staircase and just look through the bars. So, you know, you'd see George doing this thing 57 times, you know. And my dad would say...
For the Foley sound.
So when he strokes Janine's hair. No, that's terrible. No. Look, the fingers are so stiff, and it went on and on and on, and finally.
Well, you forgot to swear.
Oh yeah.
No, but I think go on, Claudia.
Yes. Yeah, and of course I remember, and I don't know whether I've got this wrong, but I remember the time when we came home from one of the shooting days, and the film canister, whatever it's called, was empty. Did you forget to load the film that day? So I remember there was a screaming match outside the. And my dad said, "There's no film in this. I've been shooting all day, and there's no film in this." Ettore, what happened?
Yeah.
And so I was going, "Oh my God!" A whole day of shooting, and there's no film in the camera.
I forgot that, Claudia.
I thought maybe I was wrong, but no, it was visually still there, So,
there were.
But that the fact that it was all, my dad actually did most of the stuff.
Yeah.
Like he always had an assistant to do the editing or whatever, but everything was like overseen by him. I'd say micromanaged, maybe.
Oh, what? We didn't have those words there, Claudia. Didn't know what it is. Yes.
That's the second time you've saved me.
It's illogical, I know, but I seem to sense it.
What's this?
It's a game I used to play when I was a little girl. Shut your eyes and think of something as hard as you can. The tap?
One finds things that we never saw at the time.
Yes.
It's been said, yes, isn't it? And I haven't seen the film for many years. 2013. We should say that there was the perhaps you might fill in that event, the event when the archive by that stage the archive had done restoration work of the prints, and I'm talking about 2013, Rosemary. 13 was the event of the Melbourne Film Festival, launch of the DVD, the books, right?
That's right.
2013, which was 2 years after Giorgio's passing. 2011, no?
No, what one? 2001.
You're talking about the Acme, the first screening of the films in 2003, and then in 2010 and 2011.
So that was a retrospective in 2003.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's something I think, Rosemary, you could probably fill us in on a little bit in terms of how you came to be involved in the very hugely responsible work of restoring Giorgio's films and preserving the legacy of them.
Well, yes, I didn't know Giorgio this way.
Yeah.
during the making of Clay, I didn't know him until 1976 or 77. Yeah. And then we were in Papua New Guinea for 3 years, where he made 5 films up there for the government.
Yeah.
But then after, when he died, when he came back from Papua New Guinea, he was working on other films. He had a number of scripts that he was working on. But none of those actually came to fruition, unfortunately. And then he died in 2001. And then people who didn't know him, like Gino Moliterno from Canberra, ANU, and Gaetano Rando from Wollongong University, they got together, they got in contact with me to piece together a lot of Giorgio's history, and they've written, or there's 2 books written, and also another one by Raphael Lampognani from Monash University, and they sort of spent a lot of time in contact with me and putting it together.
If I may add, Tuccio, PhD, which is also it's also possible to look it up. There is a PhD on the internet by Silvana Tuccio of a study of all his films that is also accessible.
And it's really worth saying that Clay was a film that was hugely unseen for many decades. I mean, the film, to those of you who don't know, it was only ever the 2nd Australian film ever selected in competition at the Cannes Film Festival, and the first and probably the only Australian film that's ever played at Cannes that was entirely self-financed, at least certainly a feature film. And then it was obviously screened subsequently in Australia. It had like I think it was a 1 week run at the Palais that was, again, kind of like a self-distribution, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Well, imagine if you know the Palais Theatre trying to have the launch of this film there in 1966, I think 66 was the following year, following Cannes. I mean, it would seem a crazy idea that we could have 1,500 people coming to the film, but we did our best, and the way Giorgio organized it was that we printed a lot of flyers, and we're all busy putting flyers in people's letterboxes in East St Kilda and Wool.
South Yarra.
Yes, everywhere. You might have helped out.
I did, yes.
So you can see when you call self-distribution now. But why the Palais? And the Palais had some attachment with Giorgio, because we were going to the Palais for the Melbourne Film Festival in those years, you see. And odd then to connect the Cannes event and then Clay at the Palais, almost like a self-style film festival.
Yeah, that's right. Only the most palatial possible show.
Well, I mean, people have made
except for this, of course,
connection between the beach. Those many times associations between St Kilda was like Venice and Cannes and so on.
Yeah. And so I think another really interesting thing to talk about is, obviously Giorgio's earlier films were all, for the most part, very much themed around new migrant issues and explored a range of ideas and themes to do with alcoholism and what it is to come to a country and seek out connections within the new community and prejudices. And they were in I would say, a more lyrical, realist style than this film. But certainly by the time we come to Clay, probably via 99%, which is also a more stylized film than some of the earlier ones. By the time we get to this film, there is a kind of radical evolution in terms of Giorgio's style, and perhaps even in terms of interests, in terms of, we'd spoken about Giorgio's interests in Freudian and Jungian psychoanalysis, and in terms of wide range of literature that was perhaps not the norm for someone from Italy, certainly a migrant from Italy at the time, having as learned and informed a sort of depth of cultural knowledge that Giorgio had at the time, strikes me as one of the really important facets of the film.
Yes, quite a radical departure from themes and narratives of earlier films. Yes, but the narrative of displacement is in the main character that is on the run, and as he said, coming from nowhere. But here, the reference to art is very strong and not evident in other films, and reflected in the fragmentary framing of shots. You see, each in the degree, as I discovered this time when I saw it, how many close-ups, the face, the interest on the face, which of course is connected with the mask, the clay, and the theme of mortality has surprised me how much there is reference to mortality in this film. That certainly not in earlier. And I think also he had to face this time the English language, because the characters in other films were, let's say, non-English speaking migrants, whereas this one, of course, even though the geography, the location, or the setting, as he wanted, is in a kind of undefined country. Nevertheless, it had to be spoken in a language which is can be recognized. But even as we know, the film was dubbed. It was we didn't record any dialogue at all during the shoot. It wouldn't have been possible, even because the sort of camera that Giorgio could use, imagine a 35mm camera, was unplumed, every time you start the shot,
the sound,
and it was all post-synchronized, and not Claudia. That work was done, of course, in another studio in Ringwood. While you're recalling Ringwood.
Yeah, and who was the guy called?
The guy was Ringwood Studio. I think his name was Power.
Okay.
Power. I should also just some details about its production, post-production. Of course, rushes would be screened virtually the next day and so on. But the editing was also done in this basement studio of the house. So the basement for the studio was underneath the house, and Claudia and Giorgio lived on the other 2 stories house. And, the dubbing is important because, for example, the woman's voice was given not by her, because Janine still had a slight accent.
Yeah, that's right.
In those, she was the daughter of Russian parents, I think, or Ukrainian. Yes,
Polish,
Eastern European. Yeah. And also, similarly, Chris voices somebody else, and so on. Yeah.
Yes, because he would he have had a slight Greek accent, maybe?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. So these are some of the idiosyncrasies of. I think there's a lot that one could now discuss about the issues of verisimilitude.
Yes, indeed.
And how this film distanced itself so much, you see, from any attempts of other naturalism.
Indeed.
And yet, during the shoot, Giorgio would direct the actors and stress this idea to be natural, to act.
Which seems a paradox, but it only goes as so far as to highlight how irreal the atmosphere of the film. The performance style is radically different from anything happening in Australian cinema at the time.
Good engine. Yes, but it burns a bit of oil. Listen. Look worried, young man. You must have something on your mind. Can I do anything for you?
No.
I want to help.
Then take away your shadow.
That's all right. Don't lose your temper over that. Anger is a deadly sin and might be the cause of your worry.
The woman's voice is from Sheila Florence, and why that's why you can hear that horsey voice, which works beautiful to me when I started hearing this. This was Sheila's, and she was as old as you saw in the film at that point. Sheila, of course, was before then was, as we all know, in the TV series, the
Prisoner.
Indeed, yes. And the connection between Sheila and the film came through her son, also Peter Oyston.
Peter Oyston, yeah.
And he made a film actually either during that time, which I think it's been neglected, and some people ought to. You see
the Kings?
That's right. Which has some, I would say, affinities. Black and white, bleak, and kind of Ingmar Bergman sort of. Sort of film.
It really was very powerful.
Yes. So. I think it was, Peter got to know Giorgio, and then eventually the mother got involved in the film.
That's interesting.
And then she was the patron for the launch, wasn't she?
Is that the case?
Yes.
Yes.
My dad named her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
As the patron of the. The launch of the movie in 1966 at the
Palais.
Palais, yeah.
Yes. Well, we should. This might have been put in the flyers too, also under the patronage.
I have a feeling it was. Yeah.
Okay. But what I think also to say there is that that scene, I believe, was added during the shoot, so it wasn't in the original script. So Sheila came into the scene and into the production during the shoot. Yes, and I think there's if you want to follow I was just rereading it, an essay by Gino Moliterno specifically on this film, beside the other study that he did in the book, which is, I think, very apt to put this film into the context of art cinema in Australia. And that essay is quite accessible through the website, the La Trobe University website, Screening the Past, so for people that wish to. And he makes a lot of reference to European art cinema and clay. Yes, very much.
I mean, that raises the interesting question of, you know, after the fact, Rosemary, what Giorgio thought of the film, you know, at the time that you met him, and when he talked about the film with you, what did you sort of glean from him in terms of just basic things like, was he very proud of the film?
Okay.
That's a hard question.
It's really hard to talk about because he just, when I met him, he took off to Papua New Guinea and he just was totally involved in that, and adjusting to the culture there and the different aspects of the 5 films that he made there for the government. It was just totally, I mean, I didn't...
Very different to this, of course.
Totally different, yes. I mean, yeah. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. So we probably have time for 2 quick questions. Does anybody? Philip, please.
Yeah, well, mine's a double-barrel question. I'd like to know, did you have a budget for the movie? If so, who funded it? And secondly, I have to congratulate you on the lip sync. It was 100%. I would never have guessed that the sound was added later. Every word was spot on for the whole movie. Congratulations for that. You really fooled me there. But so my double-barrel question really is, who funded the movie originally? Was there a budget for the movie? And how long did the shoot take? You know, with all the inclement weather and so on.
No, this is quite unusual. We all contributed it.
Okay.
We, meaning actors, the crew, whom I considered. It was a Giorgio's plan. He elaborated this suggestion. We even had to sign up contract, and it was George Dixon's brother was a solicitor and went through the hands of a solicitor to ensure that, and it's what we call now deferred payments, that we, now the budget, I can't give you a figure, Giorgio would have contributed most of it. Our contribution at that in '64, as I recall, was $200, £200.
Pounds, yeah.
Pounds, because
66.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but Giorgio bought not only the production. I think we were able to shoot it with the money that we put in, but the subsequent post-production, for instance, paying the studio for post-synchronization and so on, were borne by Giorgio. Indeed. I couldn't tell you a figure. It would be in the low 2000s. Nobody was paid. Nobody was paid. Just we had to. The film we used was Ilford, and we just going by the film and the lab costs to process it.
So did the film make a profit eventually?
No. The only sale was to the ABC, as I recall.
Which was several decades after the film.
Yes.
And they cut it down to, I think, 55 or 57 minutes.
Yes.
And the film, of course, doesn't make sense at that length.
Yes, it was reduced to fit in with the TV.
Sorry, Ettore, just one more question.
Yeah.
Chris?
Hi, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Work, really good, and thanks for screening tonight. Was it a choice, Giorgio trying to secure funding through funding bodies, or was it a choice to have the freedom to do what you all did with the film? So was it a choice to not pursue funding and support?
Well, there was
no
funding.
There was no funding.
There was no industry.
Yeah.
But you know, some films did attract government funding at some level, even though the bodies weren't formed formally as we know them today.
Yeah.
There would have been some other choices other than self-funding. I just wonder whether, and in his subsequent films, whether it gave him freedom to do what he wanted to do. Are you aware
Yeah.
of that at all? And
Sure,
also,
sure, yeah.
Double barrel question for me as well. The war, he came from, post-Second World War Europe. How could you sort of explain where you're coming from in terms of your life experiences? I wondered whether the killing somebody was somehow inspired from his experiences in the war.
If I understand correctly, I think there's two questions. One is about funding, which I think's sort of been answered. There was just no funding, no industry at the time. But the second question is really interesting because you're asking really about the symbolic architecture of the film and whether there were personal experiences that got translated in the film and in maybe an allegorical context. What do you say to that, Ettore? Because that is kind of interesting.
It's been said in studies or biographical studies that Giorgio had a strong. He brought with him a culture from Italy and Europe, and the literary culture. It's been remarked is he could recite the whole Dante Inferno just by
memory.
And there is a recording actually of Giorgio reciting parts of that. So the poetical and I think what is it? Raffaele Lampugnani has made references to Giorgio's literary culture.
Yeah.
I think so I would say that the text and very much. It was a discovery for me because I think the writing, the poetical lines at the end. So that's what I would say. Not Giorgio also in sort of post-war years was in Rome. He migrated from Sicily and lived in Rome.
He was 6 years in the police force, and that's where he learned photography.
And I think references to police, crime in his films perhaps have some links to that history. I would say.
And it was forensic photography, wasn't it?
Well, Giorgio's work, indeed, work in the forensic department, and I think he brought with him then both photographic skills as well as film. So,
there's simply too much more to talk about for the space that's allotted to us. But thank you very much, everybody, for coming, and please join me in thanking very much Rosemary.
Thank you. Thank you.